person explain the context in which I say that. And she said, no, he just came out and said, that drug and alcohol counselor doesn't even care what I put in my body. And I said, well, let me tell you. When I work with young people, the very first thing I say to them is, I don't care what you're putting in your body. I care about what I put in my body. So who out of the two of us should care about yours? That's a very different context, right, than just blanket, I don't care about what you're putting in your body. It's an approach with young people so that they own their own experience. So they don't see me as an adult that's judging or telling them what to do, because the moment that happens, I will lose them. So the idea of me saying to them right off the bat, you see them physically relax when I say that. And so that's my in. And when I explained that to the parent, she went, oh, okay, that makes sense. I said, but I love when the feedback comes back to me, because then it can allow me to alter the way I'm giving my message, or I can speak to, and I don't want you walking out of here thinking that the drug and alcohol lady says it's okay to use, right? And I do reinforce that over and over. That's not what I'm saying. But because I don't have the ability to influence your world, because you might not know me, I have to be able to say, if you're going to use, this is what you need to know. And young people have said that that has had a lot of value for them. But the whole ability, I'm just going to see if I can turn one of these. Is that going to affect your film?
No, it's fine.
You're sure?
Yeah.
The biggest piece in your effectiveness as a youth worker is your ability to obviously relate and engage with young people. And so going in with that approach is what I've determined is almost the best approach you can have, and I've been running the program for 12 years. So I also alter my approach according to youth feedback. So if a youth says to me, you know, we think your videos are old and dumb, I say, okay, right. I'll keep that in mind, and I'm certainly always on the hunt for new videos. That doesn't mean I can stop using some of the ones I've used, because unfortunately there is a shortage on educational videos out there around substance use. So you have to kind of be creative. So you're good over there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of take you through my presentation. I am absolutely okay to veer off topic. I'm very good at kind of speaking to what you need to and bringing myself back. I will try and be mindful of time. What do we have?
Till 3:30.
Sorry? So I have the hour. So first of all, I want to introduce our agency. The name of the agency is ADAPT. I don't know how many of you have heard of the ADAPT agency. I'm always amazed at how many people say no, they've never heard of us. And so ADAPT stands for Alcohol Drug Assessment and Treatment. We also do service people who are struggling with gambling, but we didn't know where to put the G when they decided that gambling was an addiction. ADAPT, right? And so essentially we provide support and service to anybody throughout Halton who has been affected by drugs, alcohol, or gambling. You don't have to be the user. You can be someone who's been affected by it. My program is in the youth services. And so across the agency, as well as with youth, we take a look at these approaches. We use the stages of change model. My program is called Know the Deal, and we'll kind of get to that in a minute. DEAL is an acronym for Drugs, Education, Alcohol, and the Law. And there are two of us in that program that have a service, have clearance through a service agreement for us to be able to work in the schools. So I am the worker for the North. I just got transferred back here last October, we're in October, so last October. I've been in Oakville for the last 7 years. But I started out here in the North, and I live out here in the North, so those of you who are from the North, woo-hoo, right? And so being back out here gives me a bit of a different experience in Oakville, because the trends and the experiences are different. The program is not funded in Burlington. We are funded through United Way, and the United Ways out in Oakville, Halton Hills, and Milton are all supporters of us being in the program. And in the Know the Deal program, we get the young person at the stage of change that is the hardest to serve young person you can work with. They are contemplative. They don't want anything to do with me. I don't have a problem. You have a problem. I don't want to be here. And so we have very high success rates of young people making changes, even when they come to us at that stage. Part of that is because of the approach I just sort of gave to you, that it opens up their mind to the learning. Like, this woman isn't going to tell me what to do, so maybe I'll listen to what she has to say, maybe, right? And by the end of the program, we do see some significant changes in young people. Even if a young person says to me, you know, yo, miss, I'm still using every day, but I'm not using it at school. Love that choice, right? Because that's harm reduction. Now we need to take a look at what's your everyday doing, right? Maybe we need to take a look at that. Because from a health perspective, certainly that is way over the clinical definition of heavy user. So we're constantly trying to encourage and support and connect with them to make changes and move through the stages of change so they get to a place where they're like, action. I am actually going to reduce or change my use or quit my use. The motivational interviewing is clearly just motivating them, helping them to stay connected, taking a look at what their developmental assets are, because we know that developmental assets, as you'll see later in my presentation, are absolutely connected to a young person's resiliency to stay away from substance use. The website for the developmental assets is at the end of my presentation. For those of you who do not know what developmental assets are, our public health across all of Halton has adopted the idea of every young person needs to have developmental assets. The developmental assets were designed by the Search Institute, which is an organization that did the largest study of its kind. So they studied over 2 million young people over 35 years. So huge study. And what they came out of that study with is that there are 40 developmental assets that all young people should have. It goes all the way down starting at age 3. So when you look at the list, which is on the website, you will see that 20 of them are internal assets, 20 of them are external. It is our job as families, as parents, to be able to try to get these assets into our kids. But at some point in their lives, it does become their job to try to figure out how to get them. Things like volunteering, if that's not something that they've done before, because it shows that they're connected to their community. So as I go through my presentation, you're going to see how having these developmental assets actually creates resiliency and a young person's ability to stay away from substance use. So they're really very important, and we measure, when young people come to us, we measure how many they have, how many they believe they have. Because if we were to ask you guys how many you believe your kids have, you'd be like, oh yes, they have that one. Oh yes, they have that one. Because as a parent, I would probably do that too. But what's more important is, do they believe they have it? Even if they do, are they acknowledging it? Because if they're not acknowledging they have that asset, then they're not able to acknowledge they have it. So we ask them, if they have under 18, they are absolutely at risk of addiction, mental illness, socioeconomic problems, low income, lack of education, homelessness, all the things that we don't want for our children. And so when we see a young person who's showing under 18 developmental assets, we're considerably concerned. Over 18, it gets better. The Search Institute wants all young people to strive for having 34 out of 40. And so you can take a look at the list. The one part that was glaring for me when I looked at it, not just learning about it, but when I looked, like being trained, because I'm a developmental asset builder. But when I looked at it as a parent, because I take my clinical hat off a lot of times when I'm a parent, I was amazed to see that when my daughter turned 3, one of the assets on there that wouldn't have even dawned on me was knowing your neighbors. Because I knew my neighbors. I grew up in a townhouse complex where the open door policy, you could go in and grab a freezy pop out of anybody's freezer and the parents didn't care. That's the way we grew up. So I took that for granted when I moved into my home as a family and thought, right, Carolyn needs to know our neighbors. Huh. And so I looked around at what did my neighbors do. I found a couple of teenagers that were our neighbors to babysitter. A neighbor up the road teaches piano out of her house. And so now when I go to my daughter and say, who would you go to if you needed to around us? She has a list of neighbors that she knows that she can go to. Wonderful. Many, many, many youth who I talk to say to me, I don't even know who my neighbors are. It is a developmental asset to know that because it connects you to your community. So developmental assets are measured. Harm reduction. A lot of people feel that harm reduction doesn't include abstinence. It does. We are not sending the message that it's okay to use drugs and alcohol as long as you're being safe. We are saying to them, you cannot have harm from a drug you don't use. You don't want to have harm, don't use it. But if you're going to leave your time with me and you're going to use it, this is what you need to know to reduce the harm. So it's not meant to upset anybody's values by saying harm reduction and leaving that impression that that doesn't include abstinence or no use, because it absolutely does. So those are our approaches. The youth, the standard principles across the agency are clearly for us to be accessible, flexible, comprehensive, responsive to the needs of the community, individuals, and families. We are shaped by our partnerships, which we are partners with many other organizations in our community. We are respectful to human dignity and rights, and we are accountable to those we serve. So every worker throughout ADAPT follows these principles. The programs that we have in the agency are listed here. The youth program specifically has Know the Deal as an education-based program, which is what my program does. Then we have our core service program, which is like your counseling and treatment program, outpatient treatment program. We have the transitional age youth program, which services young people who are in need of intensive support. So they're homeless, they're not going to school, there may be mental illness, and that program goes where the young person is. So they're very highly intensive in their ability to provide service. We also have a parent education program that essentially takes a parent through the idea of what strategies work and what strategies don't. Because when you have a young person who is using substances, there are certain strategies that absolutely don't work. All of our strategies are based on connection. They're based on sending love during times that might be very, very challenging. Send the love. And really just helping parents to have a place where they're able to go and be supported by other parents and learn more, not just about the strategies, but about the drugs themselves. Because often parents are like, my kid seems to know more than me. They seem to have every answer about all the things I don't want them doing. And so we really coach you to just take a health perspective. You don't need to know everything about pot or cocaine or whatever it is they're telling you that's out there. You don't have to necessarily know. Your position as a parent is a health perspective. It's not healthy for you, I'm not okay with it. So you really want to take a look at that piece.
I just wondered, like once a parent comes in touch with you, is there, what type of time frame, is there waiting, like what's
So Know the Deal is your first connection. We get to you the fastest. So even if a young person comes to Know the Deal through the school or through a parent contacting us, Brenda and I are fairly good at getting to a young person, like if not that week, by the next week. That doesn't mean that they'll stay with us. If we determine through our meeting with them that they need more of treatment, then we will bridge them to their treatment appointment. So waiting lists can be anywhere from like 2 weeks to 6 weeks in my experience.
And what about for the parent?
For the parent education group occurs certain times throughout the year. So I'm not sure where they are in the cycle right now, but they do one in Oakville, one in Burlington, one in Oakville. They bounce back and forth, and the one in the north is kind of as we have a group. So that piece kind of, you'd have to call intake to find out where they're at in the cycle. But the parent support comes from the Days Ahead program. So the Days Ahead program, as your treatment and support, they will support a young person on their own, a parent without their young person, because their young person says, hell no, I won't go, or the family together. So you could get connected to just that therapist until a parent education group happens, but you're getting support in the meantime. If there's a waiting list to get into that program, then myself or my counterpart Brenda, we would be your parent support person, but most of that would be over the phone, kind of as you're needing coaching in the moment until you're able to get to ongoing counseling. Does that make sense? That answers your question?
Yeah, sorry.
To build on that, and I'm sorry to bring up money, but because you're not private practice, you're funded by United Way.
Yeah, everything's free.
For parents, okay, it's free.
Everything's free.
Okay.
So ADAPT is a government-funded program funded through the Ministry of Children and Youth, and Know the Deal is funded through United Way. So all of our programs are free. Okay? So again, we're in every community. So we have many, many outreach workers. My program is outreach. If you can't come to us, we'll figure out a way to come to you. But we're all across Halton providing service to anyone who's been affected by drugs, alcohol, or gambling. So today what I'm going to be going over are some of the trends of what it is we've been seeing, not just on an Ontario level, but me being frontline, sort of letting you know what I'm hearing about and seeing. So we're going to take a look at the OSTIS, which is the Ontario Student Drug Use Survey. We're going to be talking about developmental assets and how they relate to substance use, some about the teenage brain, what signs you may see in a substance user, and then we're going to take a look at the continuum of substance use so that you can really formulate for yourself when you need to respond, how you're responding at different stages, when your young person has a problem versus their recreational using or experimental using, and just make sure that everyone has a very clear understanding of that continuum. So basically, the Ontario Student Drug Use Survey started in 1977. Sorry my year hasn't been updated. My presentation for today was on the server, so I actually had to do some updating while I was waiting for today because I couldn't get onto our server to bring it onto my computer. So it also goes to 2015. So what you'll see through the presentation is I have included the 2015. I just missed that 1 year right there. So it is the longest standing study of its kind. But of course, Halton thought they were different. We thought, we are better than the rest of Ontario. There is no way that we fall in line with those statistics. And so they did, Halton did one of its own in 2010. So what you're going to kind of see is that our results actually are no different than the rest of Ontario's. So they did not do another survey after 2010 because we were right in line with their statistics. So as you can see, I have added the 2015 earlier today. So these are the trends that I've listed from 2009. And what you can see is we are going down. There's a slight increase in cigarettes and a slight increase in cocaine. But we are going down in all of our numbers over the years. And so that means that we're doing something to be educating and helping young people understand how to make some better choices. What I want to just switch over here to show you is the actual Ontario Drug Use Survey document. It is a really good read. It actually is interesting. You might think, oh, you know, dry. It actually isn't very dry at all in regards to the results. So if you go on to, where's my mouse here? Sorry. If you go onto the CAMH website, what they'll do is you can type in the OSTIS on there, and you'll see that the whole report is there. What I like to look at and what my numbers are coming from, is it not switched over? I know, the projector is supposed to be showing what I'm seeing. I'll show you the report then, if...
Just say, I was in this room for the first session, and she was having a little bit of difficulty too.
There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you, thank you. I feel better about that. So you can see that my statistics are taken right from the drug use survey, but what I want you to see as you go through, not just all the numbers and all the different substances that are there, but they will give you an overview of the different substances that have gone up and gone down. If you continue to go through, what you'll see is it separates itself between males and females as well, and then you'll go to the tracking emerging trends area, and it will separate it from smoking to alcohol to marijuana, over-the-counter drugs. So it just gives you an idea of kind of what it is that's going on out there, and the information from my presentation will be taken directly from that document. There we go.
What's the age of the kids?
They do it in grade 7 and grade 10.
Okay.
So, and those are because those are the years that have been identified as being the most vulnerable.
So is this a combination?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want the separation, then you've got to go to the full report, and it will show you the differences between the grades and the ages and the male and female. So what we see from the report is really things like our opiates, cough syrup and energy drinks has gone down. We've seen a rise in MDMA, which is what you would know to be ecstasy. Young people do not call it ecstasy. I wish they would start making changes and really just call it MDMA. They'll call it Molly or M, but they don't call it ecstasy. So the active ingredient in the drug called ecstasy is MDMA. Don't ask me to say it because it's like this long. But essentially that drug has kind of gone up. What I thought was really cool was we've had a decrease in students who reported hazardous or harmful drinking. It went from 32 to 20%. So that's a pretty drastic difference in young people drinking hazardously. But then we had a slight increase in them not remembering what happened. It was 18% and it's now 19%. So although there are less young people who are doing it, there's a bit of an increase in them reporting that they don't remember what happened during that incident. We also have 5% of students reporting that they're using marijuana in electronic cigarettes. And so that's an emerging trend that we're seeing is this vaping and kind of what that's all about and what it means and what are they getting. Because it's varying. If you get a vape that's using juice, that vape cannot be used to smoke marijuana because it actually has these juice pellets that go in it and they vape them and they have different flavors. And I mean, again, it's this whole idea of why did people start smoking in the first place? Now they've just decided to get all creative with it and reduce the carcinogens that are going into the body because that's what a vaporizer does. But there are other chemicals and other dangers that we are going to find out over long term. But because they're relatively new right now, we don't have a lot of data. Not all of the juice contains tobacco. So some people are using them to reduce harm in quitting their cigarette use because you can get different percentages of tobacco in your juice. So that means that you can wean yourself off of cigarette use by using this strategy. So there's not a lot of data on it. You'll hear a lot of different things that are going around, but it's new. And we are starting to track the effects in the young people who are getting pulled into this trend.
What do they call that, like vaping juice?
Vaping, yeah, juice.
The juice part.
Yeah, they'll say that,
Vaping
yeah.
juice?
Well, no, they usually just say vaping, and I'll say, are you vaping pot or are you vaping juice?
Okay,
And if you're doing juice, is there tobacco in it or is there not?
okay.
Right? So, did you have a question?
Yeah, energy drinks?
Yeah, so energy drinks would be started getting tracked a couple of years ago, really because, well actually in 2009, because the increase in energy drinks and the impact on the body, so health. So the drug that would be in an energy drink would be caffeine, right? So that would fall under your central nervous system stimulants and the harms that are happening to the body. So some of your other drugs in that category for central nervous system stimulants would be cocaine and methamphetamine and MDMA is a stimulant as well. So although the energy drink may be a milder form of a stimulant, it depends on how many they drink, right? So in that regard, they wanted to start tracking it because caffeine is a drug.
Plus, it's not regulated at all.
It's not,
And
right?
aren't they also mix?
Yeah, so what happens really, adults do that, not just young people, right? If you've heard of a Jägermeister, so that's Jaeger bomb is Jaeger mixed with a Red Bull, right? And so the dangers in that really are that stimulants will mask impairment. So when you are impaired by alcohol, but you stimulate the brain, you're not going to appear or feel as though you're impaired. But you are, because the breathalyzer doesn't care what you mixed it with. It cares that you have alcohol in your blood. The problem is most people make decisions based on how they feel, not what they know. So we teach young people to go with what you know. If you know that there's alcohol or something impairing your body, your brain in your body, then you need to know how long it takes for that to get out of your body before you're doing things like sports and driving and being responsible for other people, all of those kinds of things where you should not be impaired, right? Yes.
Just the
MDMA? Can, just a few examples, or is it only pill form, or just?
No, MDMA can look like a crystal, it can be a powder, it can come as a pill. Ecstasy, as we would know it, looked like these little wonderful, colorful little pills, and everyone thought that the colors meant something, which they don't. Right now, young people are not using the word ecstasy because they consider ecstasy to be dirty, that it has other things mixed in with it, which it does. So now, when they see it more in a crystal form, they feel like it's pure, right? But pure MDMA would kill you, so it's not pure. But this is the whole idea that they're buying into what each other has to say. So often I'm saying to young people, so your dealer, like, did he go to school for pharmacology? Like, does he give you a write-up that tells you the percentage of your THC? So no? Oh, all right. So where does he know this information, and how do you know what you're getting? Right? Just sort of challenging that whole idea. And then you get, yo, miss, he's my friend. I'm like, yeah, I get that he's your friend, but he also doesn't know what's in it or where it came from. You're going based on someone just saying it's good stuff, but that's it, right? So, it does come in a powder, crystal, or pill form. And that's the trend that really brought up this whole idea of cell phones, when parents should be having access to their young person's cell phone. My advice is you never, ever, ever give your kid a cell phone. You buy one, you say it's yours, and they can use it. But there's no passwords on it, you have access to it whenever you want to look at it, and it's your phone. Because by law, they're not allowed to have an account until they're 18 anyway. And so what happened is people started disguising, kind of like marijuana. What's marijuana's name? Mary Jane. Ecstasy became Molly. Are we going to go see Molly tonight? And the parent thinks they have a friend named Molly. Right? So it's this whole idea of upping our monitoring and supervision while young people are going through these stages and really expecting a high level of judgment. And where you're not sure if you can trust your young person's judgment, that's where you step into their world. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're taking things away. It means you're stepping in and you're monitoring and supervising where they're going, what they're doing, who they're talking to, when they're home, all of that sort of stuff. So, good? Okay. So, from our developmental assets perspective, in this particular survey, they only used 21. They didn't use all 40. But what they found is that you have a significant lower chance of your young person using marijuana in the past 12 months based on their level of assets. So when you have more assets, the number is lower. Sorry. Yes, thank you. I think the other one is the opposite. That's why I get confused. So what you can see from this graph is that we've got to get these assets in our young people. There's a saying happening right now that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And in Europe, in Portugal, where they decriminalized all drugs, what they noticed was a significant decrease in their addiction rate because they took all that money that they were using to enforce drugs and they put them into programs for connecting people who are using substances to, jobs and to resources and to places where they had meaningful experiences. Because when you reject a substance user, they're more likely to continue to use. And that's where our love approach really comes in, of send them the love, because when they go out into the world having that as a foundation, they have connection, they have meaning and value, and that decreases their vulnerability. So this is the graph for marijuana, and then I have another graph that details alcohol. So this is a heavy drinking episode per month. And as you can see, the more assets you have, it's the same, then the more assets you have, the less likely you are to have these kinds of experiences. So I would encourage you to take a look at the developmental assets to support this data.
So part of the survey, the kids identified which assets they had.
There were 21, but they don't detail in this graph which ones they said they had, but that's where you'll see how many they said they had. So in the graph, it'll say that there's In this one, it was 0 to 5 assets were identified. The next one was 6 to 10 assets. They said they had 11 to 15 and 16 to 21. Right, so you can see that there's this lower number. The more assets they have, the less likely they were to have these heavy drinking episodes. So we want to kind of make sure that you understand and you're able to kind of figure out what your approach is going to be when you're talking to your young person. And when I work with parents, I often talk with them about a health approach, which means we've got to be thinking about the brain. So over the past 7 years here in Halton, we've actually started this education, disseminating information about the latest research we have around the developing brain. So I don't know if any of you have seen Jean Clinton. No, Jean Clinton was hired by our local integrated health network, which is our government body that oversees our health network in specific areas and boundaries. And they hired Dr. Clinton, who is a child psychiatrist, to start to help disseminate information about what we need to know about the teenage brain based on science that was really just kind of coming out at that time. So a lot of people have access to this information because Jean has been presenting in the area, she probably presented in the area for about 3 years consistently. If you see her come back, I would absolutely recommend that you go and see her. She's fantastic to go see. But essentially, what she sort of says and educates parents about is that the brain develops from the back to the front. And so the last part of the brain to develop is these 2 frontal lobes. And because young people don't have that fully developed until they're 24, it means that they don't really have access to the skills that that frontal lobe has to offer. Now, some of them do it better than others. Some adults do it better than others. So I just want to put us all kind of like realizing that we all have different levels of skill. But if we can activate this frontal lobe to be working more effectively through the teenage years, then you're going to be making the connections that they're going to need later in their life. So the frontal lobe is responsible for your governing emotions, judgment, planning, organizing. It is the CEO of your brain. So when I'm doing a lot of my parent talks, I say to sort of parents, when your kid is like, you know, done something and you're like, what were you thinking? And the kid goes, I don't know, right? What I'm here to tell you is that they do know, and I know you know they know, but why are they not able to tell you? They're not able to tell you because most adults will not accept their answer. And their answer is, because I felt like it. The response to that is, what do you mean you felt like it? Right? And it's instead of, tell me about that. Tell me about why you felt like it. Help me to understand that, right? In one of the teenage brain documentaries, Frontline is an excellent one to watch. It's still online. You can go to Frontline and type in the teenage brain. There's this clip in there where this teenager is in the kitchen with his mom, and he's stacking milk crates. And he's on a dirt road, and his friends are around him, and he's stacking these milk crates on the ground, and him and his mom are in the kitchen watching this video, right? So they're together. And the mom is seeing the video for the first time. And she's like, what is going on? And then the camera kind of pans down the road to a car that goes vroom, 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 towards the milk crates. So she's in the kitchen, kind of going, like, what is about to happen here? And her son is standing beside her, and he's like watching her stress out. And in the video, ladder comes up. He goes up the ladder, and he stands on these milk crates. Ladder pulls away. Car. Oh yeah, the car came towards the milk crates, hit the milk crates. He lands on the ground. Yes! His mom is like, right? In the kitchen. He's laughing in the kitchen, right? This is his mom's reaction. And so when we look at that example, it's sort of like, what were you thinking? And he's like, see how cool that was? It was like totally cool. Because young people are driven based on emotion. If they don't have access to this frontal lobe, then what they do is always driven by how they feel. And if you're not able to tap into that, so you could say, yeah, I could see how that might be fun. but did you think of this, or this? Huh, no, you didn't. So you broaden their ability to think of outcomes. You broaden their ability to have proper judgment and planning around what could happen. With substance use, it's no different. We all, as a human race, want to fit in and belong. I say to young people, that doesn't go away when you're an adult. I'm 42 years old and still experience it. When my friends get together and they're gonna drink and I'm deciding not to, I don't fit in and belong simply because I'm not doing what they're doing, right? It doesn't mean I can't still go, but I have to bear the burden that I'm doing something different than they are. And I might even get my adult friends saying, what's wrong with you? How come you're not having it? And I have to say, because I'm not. Like, whatever. Right? But that takes the fully developed brain and the ability to bear the burden of what it means to not fit in and belong. And young people don't do that very well. So when I say to them, do you think that fitting in and belonging has anything to do with your substance use? Every one of them says no. No, I use because I want it. I use because I like it. It's my choice. I'm in charge. And I say, how often do you say no? Because if you're not saying no very often, then you are using to fit in and belong. Because saying no takes courage. So when you present it like that, they kind of go, oh. Right? There's not a lot of room to debate that. But it's a human experience that I can relate to. We all have it. Right? So again, the ability to relate to your young person, to tell them about times that you struggled, to become someone who has credibility, not just their mom or their dad or their caregiver. That you are a person with lived experience. Even if you're not having a problem with substance use or you never have. You still have lived experience being around other people that you've seen things happen with. So use that. Don't be afraid to say to them, I'm not saying this to you because I think it's okay. I'm saying this to you because these are things that have happened that I can say have gone on. And then it's not so far away. It's not just something they read in the news. It's not just something that oh, that won't happen to me. Well, it might not, but it might.
But what if you get the kid that says, well, you did it, so,
Well,
you know, that's... you
Well, again,
Yeah.
you're allowed to do a lot of things and learn.
know, okay.
So what I
I think
did.
a lot of parents won't say all the
Well,
things.
first of all, it's not necessarily that you do have to tell them everything you did.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm not suggesting you have to go home and be like, okay, I gotta tell you. No, I think it needs to be.
That didn't remember?
I think it needs to be appropriate. I think that you're always able to use lessons in a third party. When I was growing up, my greatest resource was my dad. My dad shared with me many, many stories growing up in England and kind of being street bound, born during the war, of his friends that he lost. He worked when he was 15 stocking shelters in England and found a number of young ladies dead in the bathrooms while he was stocking them. And I remember hearing those stories as young as grade 7 and thinking to myself, I never ever want my dad to experience that happening to me. So it became part of my values that my dad was able to share that stuff and say, I just need you to know, Claire, like this stuff happens. And I've seen it, right? It had an impact on me. Now, as I got older, he may have shared other more personal stories, but certainly your journey really doesn't have anything to do with your son or daughters because they have to figure out their own. So when young people, I was saying to some of you before you came in, when young people ask me, oh, come on, miss, we're going to know that if you use pot, we're going to know that you know what you're telling us not to use, and you're going to know, and I say, I don't need to use heroin to help someone get off of heroin. Right? And how does my journey have anything to do with yours? You don't know anything about me. But to assume that I don't have experience around drugs and alcohol, that would be naive. Right? So in that regard, I have life experience. I have people around me where I've had to experience the effect of substance use. And so you don't need to know my story to be able to make decisions of your own. And that may or may not work for you as a parent. But even if you have used, if you're making different decisions in your life now, why are you? Now, I work with a lot of parents who are users, no judgment, like that's their journey as well. But I say to young people, you get to decide if you want to use. It's your brain. And just because you have a family history of people who smoke up every day does not mean that you have to. It's your brain for you to be protecting. And this is the damage that this drug causes to your developing brain. Your parents wouldn't have known that when they started using. We didn't have this brain information until about 7 to 10 years ago. So it's a different story today. Why do you think you can't see cigarettes on the shelf anymore? Because of science telling us how bad they are for the human body. So we have research now that your family didn't have access to before. You get to decide if you want to listen to it or not. You don't have to. Yes.
I know, I'm sort of laughing, and this is maybe more of a comment, and maybe I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot. But I understand what you're saying about, they don't need to know our journey, and we learn from our lessons.
Mhm.
So I will say that I drank a lot as a
Mhm.
teenager, and for the party type of
Yeah.
drinking, I actually have no regrets. I had a lot of fun. Parties were more fun
Fair enough.
when I drank.
Yeah, fair enough. And I love that. I love that. I still have friends in my life who are using marijuana, and they don't think it's done anything to them, and they don't think there's anything wrong with them. But again, you don't know that your kids will experience that.
Yeah.
So you've got to take it both ways. I got one of my girlfriends in the car once on a trip for an hour and a half. And I said to her, no judgment to you, but please, please don't be passive in your sons using pot. Because you don't know what it will do to their brain. And there is no such thing as a responsible parent that says, I can't wait for my kid to use drugs. That's not a responsible parent, right? So you are able to say, you know what? I did some things to keep myself safe. I didn't go to parties without a friend. I made sure I slept over so that I didn't have access to my car. You still have lived experience and learning that could potentially keep them safe. And you can say, you know what, there might have been times where I didn't remember the next day. And although nothing happened to me, I don't know that nothing will happen to you. So it's still dangerous, right? Is that fair? Okay. Right, because it's important to look at both sides for sure. Yes.
Just in a different question. All this data that you're presenting is
Yes.
self-reported, right? Like it's surveys done by students.
The OSTIS is, yes.
Right,
So
that
there's gonna be, I mean, it's not.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, and that's cool. I
There's
mean,
gonna be discrepancies,
there's gonna
for
be some,
sure.
right. So I was gonna ask you if there is, like, how big is the gap between a self-reported data versus what you observe in practice? And other agencies like yourselves, I mean, I'm assuming there's other data sources, right?
The OSTIS is the largest one of its kind here in Ontario, right? I don't know of any other ones in Ontario, to be honest with you.
But people that come in though, those
People
are real.
come in. Oh, for sure. I mean, ADAPT does its own data collection, and
Right.
we do reporting to the LIN, to the local integrated.
So would that
health network.
correlate to what you're seeing? Like the fact that these trends are going down, was that kind of
I haven't done a comparative for me to be able to give you a solid answer.
even anecdotally, like based?
I think that I would agree that there is, in my personal experience, I would agree that there are, I would agree that it's about the same. The number one, where it differs, the number one drug of choice that comes in my door is marijuana. And that's not showing on the OSTIS as being the number one.
Yeah.
But that's one of the discrepancies.
Yeah.
Alcohol has a different value around it. So although we have a lot more people, that are using alcohol, those kids aren't coming to me.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right?
That's what-
Alcohol is your number one,
Right.
right? But marijuana is the number one that I see. Because alcohol is generally not one they're going to school and using. Not to say they never do, and not to say I haven't had them. But there's a different type of impairment. So that's where the data would differ in the sense that I don't see a lot of young people where alcohol is the number one.
Yeah, and actually that's what surprised me. That's
Yeah.
why I wanted to ask you
Because
too.
alcohol generally is, you follow social norms because of how impaired you get, right? The way that it does that with the brain. With marijuana, you can walk, you can talk, you can get to class, you can go to work, you can do these things, so it creates this illusion that you're not impaired, when in fact you are. If you were to go into simulated testing, you would see the three main areas of the brain that are impaired is the area that deals with learning, the area that deals with cognitive function and emotional management, and the area that deals with coordination and fine muscle control. So you are still as impaired on marijuana when it comes to something like driving. So one of the last year's statistics that was on the sheet was that drugging and driving has gone up. That's not glaring in the 2015 report, but it's still true. That young people have gotten this message that drinking and driving is not okay. We've done a really great job with that, but they don't understand that they shouldn't be getting into a car with someone who smoked pot at the party. That's the part that they're not understanding, right? So that's where some discrepancies will
Maybe
be.
that is shifting a bit, because I've seen a lot of new ads.
There are, yeah, the government is getting on board. We've got that ad where they do the brain and then the tubes of the brain get full of smoke, and it's talking about how marijuana overwhelms the brain. But even then, there's a lot of information about marijuana. There's this new cannabinoid system, the endocannabinoid system, and realizing how marijuana has benefits versus costs to that system. We know that the medical use of marijuana is creating miracles in certain areas for sure. I mean, I think it's amazing. But that part of the plant is called CBD. And that part of the plant actually opens up highways in the brain so that the brain can make more connections. What the young people are using is THC, which actually closes those connections. And so when you grow marijuana, you cannot grow high CBD and high THC at the same time. You can only have one or the other. So and you don't get high off CBD. So when youth come to me now, because they're getting these little snippets of information, they're like, yo miss, I use for the CBD. I'm like, no you don't. I'm like, no you don't. Because you're using to get high, and you can't have high CBD in the pot you're smoking. Right? So it's always cool to see how they think that they're dropping stuff that they think I don't know about. And I'm not to say that there isn't that one kid that does say something to me that I'm like, what? Haven't heard of that. But mostly I stay ahead of the curve when it comes to what's out there and what's kind of going on.
Are they different plants?
Yeah, so you have different versions of the plant that you can produce. And so when you get really into it and you go to pot stores, they can tell you what percentage of each plant is in which and what it does. So one of them will cause more of like a mellow, and the other one will cause more of a little bit of psychedelic. So if you get pot that puts you into a psychotic state, you probably had really high levels of this sativa plant. So yeah, I know, it's all very, I know. Not that you would want to read it, but there is a book called The Pot Book, and it's like the Bible, and I'm telling you, I read it over my summer vacation, and was like, listen dudes, I know how to grow it. So, doesn't mean I am, but the book really, it speaks very neutrally. It talks about all the harms, every area of the body that this drug, all organs that this drug affects and has harms to. It talks about the medical use, it talks about the prohibition. It's just sort of like, it's an excellent resource.
But I just wondered if the change is coming, like you hear kids, even kids that have been through the counselors will say there's pot everywhere, in every high school, everywhere.
There is.
And I think, I could be old, but a lot of, back in the day, it was more the stoners,
Right.
or the kids that didn't do well in school.
Yeah,
Whereas now, and then the other kids were kind of drinking.
right.
So now,
We still have that.
yeah, or is it more that the pot is kind of, it's like every.
No, you want to remember that you got to put it into context. And when your kid says everyone is using, everyone they know is using.
But even parents
That doesn't
will
mean
say,
everyone is
oh,
using.
it's everywhere. Like
Right.
you said, which high school's worse, which high school, oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it.
And I think that more is a blanket statement for you to assume that you're going to send your kid to one school and there's not going to be drugs there is naive.
Okay.
Right? I think that is more of a blanket statement that it is everywhere, right? It is easy to get, that's why it's the drug of choice versus alcohol.
Okay.
It is everywhere in that sense, but does that mean everyone is using it? No. Right? I have a lot of people who come into my program and are non-users. They're to learn more about why to continue to be a non-user, because they want to maintain their ability to stay away. Because parents want their kid in grade 8 to take this program before they go into grade 9, so that they know what they need to know to be safer, right? There's the education is your foundation for making any good decision. So when it comes to substance use, that's what Know the Deal does. It gives you, I mean,
You can do that.
yeah.
Is that program like a weekend workshop? Is it a?
Know the Deal in the north is generally accessed through your school, so parents are able to call the school and say, I want Claire to get connected to my young person. We try to put them in a group because learning in a silo is actually by research not good because they walk out of it thinking they're the only one that's been taught what I taught them. So where the school is able to pull a group together, we would try to do that. The one-on-one work is very limited because we try to work with groups. In the south, in Oakville, they do a 4:30 Tuesday group. So they offer the program the same as in the north in all the schools, same thing happens, but the Oakville has the ability to offer an evening, whereas the north doesn't, because I can't bring kids from Acton to Milton. Right, I can't bring them together to one location.
But you don't go into a school unless a school requests you
No,
to come
I
in.
can go, no, I'm not allowed to go into the school without parent permission. So the Safe Schools Act states that no one outside of the school board is allowed to have access to your children without the parent's permission. So where the parent wants their young person to get to me, not because the school's had a problem, not because there's even an issue at home, but because they want this prevention education, you just have to call your VP at your school and say, I would really like for Claire Langridge to have access to my young son or daughter, and then you instruct that VP to send me an email to say, you've been invited to come in and meet with Jane Doe, and I know that the school's been given permission.
Would it be something that they could bring up at a parent council meeting and just say, have you done this program? Is it something your
The
schools
school?
can- Yeah.
I'm active in every school in the north except for Christ the King. But that doesn't mean that Christ the King doesn't know I'm available, it just means I haven't been asked to come in. So I'm active in every high school here, out here in the north. In Oakville, we are available to every high school in Oakville, but I don't know what schools are active, because Brenda and I switched over the past year, so to sort of name which schools are bringing us in. It's also dependent on the administrators. So if an administrator is coming from Burlington, where they don't have the program, and then they come out here, there's some education that's required to help them to understand how to use us. So we are part of progressive discipline. If the young person has been suspended, they are able to say, I'll reduce your suspension if you would be willing to take this program. So it's built into the suspension. Some administrators will do that, some won't. It just is always like anything. You'll have some officers that will be war on drugs and other officers that will give warnings. So it just sort of depends, but we are cleared through the service agreement to be in every high school.
Okay, it's called,
Funding. United Way doesn't fund us in Burlington.
and it's called Know the Deal.
Know the deal.
And they'll know it.
Yeah, they should.
And that's grade 8.
High school. We're not in the elementary
What about the
panel.
grade 8, you're saying preventative?
So you'd have
Yeah.
you'd have to call your worker to have them connect with one of us, and then we would be looking at when we can provide service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could a principal contact you and say parents have shown interest in this program for grade 8?
Not to bring me in?
Yeah.
No, we are not allowed or cleared to be in the elementary panel according to the board.
Okay.
So it's not
Do
a
you see
school
any
decision.
changes coming? Do you see that changing?
Well, Bravo is in the
Yeah, I was
elementary
just,
panel.
I was just gonna ask you
So
about
that's why,
that.
Bravo is there already, so
Bravo's
in that
fantastic.
regard.
Yeah, is it as
Yeah,
detailed as?
I
It's
did
a
a lot of-
6-week, it's a
yeah.
6-week program.
Okay.
And I did a lot of training with the Bravo officers,
Okay.
so some of them that I trained would have the information I would have.
Okay.
Know the Deal is also a six to 8
Oh,
week
okay.
training
Cool.
program.
But that's directed to high school, that's the
It's a
difference.
high school program,
Gotcha.
but we do deliver information differently, because the message is gonna be different, right? Harm reduction is not necessarily gonna come from the police department. I mean, I hope that in some regards it does, but I haven't actually seen Bravo be delivered. But that's why, they already have a program that's in the elementary panel.
So
Yeah.
Bravo and you are the same.
Pardon?
Similar.
Well, youth who tell me that they've taken it say that Know the Deal delivers information more like maturely, like an adult, right? Like the way I'm talking to you guys here is a lot of the way I talk with them. So it isn't this whole, this is what you need to know, right? It's
Right.
not, it's like, okay, dudes, like, this is what you're doing to your brain. It's also a lot more brain focused, in regards to you need to be thinking about how you're affecting your brain. So some of the signs that you might see, you need to be really, really mindful of the fact that these are gonna cross over with being a teen. Right? So these are not gonna be specific to substance use. So what I typically say to parents is you're looking for like 3 to 5. Right? When you got them, then you gotta be going, You just gotta be thinking, right? So you're kind of bringing them together. So changes in sleeping patterns, sleeping all the time, sleeping very little. Sorry, the light weight gain or loss, bloodshot eyes, runny nose, unusual smells, thinning or loss of hair, bruises or skin abrasions. Really that's more so for central nervous system depressants. Right now we have Xanax is a huge drug going around all of our schools. It's like nothing I've ever seen in the 12 years I've been doing my work. I can't believe the media hasn't put something out like they would for MDMA or ecstasy. It's very, very scary, and almost every young person coming to me who is using is disclosing that Xanax is something that they've either tried or their friends are trying. It's coming in from Mexico. It's a prescription drug that's generally meant for anxiety, but they're overusing it, and as a central nervous system depressant, its job is to shut down your brain. So in that regard, kids are being found unconscious, and lots of hospital visits have occurred, but it is like wildfire. So you're going to get the bruises and skin abrasions, like when you, and quite honestly, just to be perfectly truthful, I don't know how, but I ended up with like this great big bruise on the back of my leg. Didn't even know I had it. And my partner was like, "How did you get that?" I'm like, "I didn't even know I had it, right? I don't know." But where you're young people and that's happening a lot and showing up a lot, then you're kind of being wondering kind of what's happening. Less attentive to self-care would be sort of your signs you're looking for. Behavioral signs would be sort of negative changes in schoolwork, missing school or declining grades, lack of interest in the future, lying, stealing, being manipulative, increased secrecy about possessions or activities. This whole idea of not letting you see their phone would be a big indication, right? The coded language, like, "Oh, are you going to see Molly?" Mood changes, withdrawn, again, teenagers, like, it's going to fit in with that. But it's that whole idea of becoming disconnected, right? It's not just your everyday moodiness. It's that whole idea that your young person is now lacking emotional management. They don't just get annoyed with you, they swear at you. Or, it's ongoing and pervasive. It's kind of, you've not ever seen them not in this mood. That you're like, what is happening? Frequent forgetfulness. Uses of things to cover things up, like the guys, seriously, like they use the axe, just like in the commercials. And you're like, you think the girls are all gonna come magnet to them, right? So the perfumes and things like that, girls tend to use baby powder, but your mouthwashes, your mints, your kids all of a sudden always got a pack of gum on them and they never really did before, right? Stuff like that. Changing in clothing choices, so the new fashions that allow you to hide stuff, right? There are clothes that will have secret pockets and stuff that will allow young people to hide things in the seams and you wouldn't really know it was there.
Are they buying these at regular stores like H&M?
No. But they're also not necessarily specialty stores, and sometimes they'll make them in their clothes. Like in winter jackets, like you can very easily pick the seaming out to create a different kind of pocket inside the feather down, right? So how are you going to know you've got weed in there when it's all puffy anyway? Stuff like that. One of the officers, the officers when they bring their drug kit around, they will show you highlighting markers that you can take the end off of and you can stick stuff inside the highlighter so you wouldn't know. Glass cases that hold grinders, things like that. So just anything that they might have that you haven't seen before or is new. It's like, oh, what's this, right? Removal from extracurricular activities, family time or away time from home, not coming home late at night, increased borrowing money. Number one thing, if you find out your young person is using substances, why are you giving them money? And so I'm always amazed how many parents I have to remind that to. Well, I'm only giving them $5 for lunch. Yeah, well, they're pitching together and five times 4 is 20 and now they've got themselves a gram. So, like you've really got to be thinking of that whole idea of if you're going to use drugs and I don't agree with that choice, and that's what you want to be doing. When you live away from our home, you're going to need to figure out how to get it yourself. So now you've got no money, you've figured it out, right? Evidence of paraphernalia is pretty clear, and missing prescription drugs in the house. So really quick, I just want to highlight that when I talk with young people, this is actually one of our worksheets. And when I talk with young people about these different stages, the areas that they mix up the most are these two, and that's in regards to family values and societal beliefs. So the wheres, whens, and whys. So I use the analogy, pardon me, of Sam. So how do we know that Sam is a recreational user? Is Sam using it at school? Most young people go, yes, and I go, no, Sam is not using it at school. Sam is abiding by social norms, which means the where's, when's, and the why's are appropriate. So Sam is not using it at school, not using it at work, not using after school because there's other things you're needing to be getting done. So when is Sam using? Sam is typically using on weekends where it's not interfering with work. Is Sam overusing? Is Sam drinking to get drunk? No, he's not, because that's not healthy or responsible. So our guidelines for alcohol, which a lot of young people will laugh at, a lot of adults laugh at, but our guidelines are no more than 2 standard drinks in a 3-hour period. So that's going to keep your young person safer. And so you're talking with them about these guidelines. Is Sam using because Sam has not very good emotions? No, we're not using to deal with negative emotions. So Sam is typically in a good headspace. Sam is with his peers, his or her peers. Sam is looking at weekends as long as it's not interfering. Sam is not overusing. And those are the guidelines for adults. Like, those are our guidelines for recreational use. You go outside of that box and all of a sudden people are like, wow, you got a problem. So how do you know Sam has a problem? Is it okay for Sam to be stealing? Is it okay for Sam to be using at school? Is it okay for Sam to be involved with the law? Is it okay for Sam to be damaging his relationships with his peers, with his friends? He's losing friends, his parents, all of those sorts of things. Thank you for saying. And so, you're really wanting to define inside your family what constitutes a problem user, what you're going to be considering a problem in your family values. What parents can do: know where your child is, what they're doing, who they're doing it with, and when they're going to be home. Praise their efforts and strengths. Model low-risk alcohol and no illegal drug use yourself. Talk to your kids about your expectations regarding their use of drugs and tell them clearly how you're going to handle it. Grounding does not work. The approach that will work is, if I am going to contribute to your life in positive ways by getting you the clothes you like, getting the foods that you like, signing you up for things you like, helping you to get your license, providing you with a cell phone, if I'm going to do all of those things, then I need for you to be contributing to your own life positively. If I see that you're not doing that, then you need to know that these things are going to be the cost. The last thing to go is any recreational activities, as long as they're still going, because that's where you want to make sure they're connected. But you really want to take this approach of the world out there works that you give and you take. You earn. You don't get a promotion unless you do the work. So if you can model that inside your home, if you still want these things from me, then this is what I need to see from you. And if I don't see those things, then your life is going to get pretty uncomfortable pretty soon when I'm not doing your laundry and providing you with detergent. So now you need to use your drug money to go get detergent to wash your clothes. So let's see how much you're going to like that, right? So sometimes you have to make them uncomfortable. What I say to parents is, change does not occur until where you are is too difficult to stay. So how comfortable are you making your kids?